For those who have careers that keep them out at sea for long periods of time, what is the creepiest thing you've seen out in the water? The bioluminescent animals, or whatever they are, in the water is pretty amazing. Our toilet would fill up with seawater, and if you took a piss in it in the middle of the night, it would agitate the water and it would glow sometimes. I am a recreational sailor who travels for weeks at a time at sea. I once saw a flame on the water not 10 yards from me. Just freaking burning at midnight. I used to be an oilfield diver in the Gulf of Mexico. I'd say about 80% of the dives I logged were at night. Mostly 500 feet and under DSVs. It's very eerie feeling sitting on the downline doing in-water decompression in the middle of night. I'd always ask topside to turn off my headlight. Like a worm on a hook. Just bobbing in the darkness. This sort of qualifies. Former Navy here. Somewhere off the coast of Italy saw a very, very small boat, not much bigger than a rowboat, about 9 or 10 miles offshore. This was sometime around midnight. There was no light from land, and no other ships around. It had a light. Our ship captain said it was a fisherman, and the fish would be attracted to the light at that time. Imagine being in a rowboat about 10 miles offshore in the middle of a pitch-black night, waiting to see what finds you. A dead human body. It was the tropics, and it wasn't in good shape. We turned it over to the authorities at nearest land. There were enough teeth left to identify it by dental records. Here's hoping the man's family got closure. Edu/Altral 2010 is correct. The body was double-bagged and stored in the walk-in freezer until our next port visit. There was quite a bit of cleaning and decontamination involved, but that's the gist of it. Not so much creepy as eerie, but being out in the blue at night in a lightning storm in a slack wind. The ocean was very flat, no big rolling swells, just tiny little ripples. The whole world would be black, and then there would be a flurry of bolts, and the whole world would be silver. The ocean looked like nothing so much as aluminium foil that had been scrunched up, and flattened out. The water looked like mercury, and all the little ripples made these very dramatic black shadows. What I'm learning from these comments is that the ocean makes people poets. Empty boat far out at sea. Not exactly in the water, but body parts in a sea chest. The sea chest is a hole in the hull, which is used for water intake. I was drinking in an airport bar and met a woman who worked as a commercial fisherman, on her way to SE Asia for R&AMP, or with her family. Real salt-of-the-earth lady. She regaled me with stories about her work, all the good stuff about working in her world, all the reasons she kept doing it for decades. I asked her what the scariest thing she saw out on the open ocean was, and, without any hesitation, she said, "Oh, an underwater UFO. I saw one rise up out of the ocean next to my boat and fly off into the sky." The matter-of-factness of her answer bothers me to this day. I was underway from the port of Houston to Cartagena, Colombia. The vessel cuts all lights off on the outside of the boat, so it's pretty dark outside. I would always go and sit out on the deck and listen to my headphones, and look at the stars. Well, one night, somewhere in the middle of the Caribbean Sea, I noticed a swarm of lightning bugs cross the boat. Totally blew my mind to see light out or nowhere. At least I think it was lightning bugs. On the same trip heading back to Houston from Colombia, I witnessed a satellite crashing. At least, that's what I think it was. It steadily strobed and lit up the night sky and water for about 15 minutes till I couldn't see it anymore. And on a different trip, I was in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. No moon, no clouds, no light pollution, the amount of stars that I saw made me cry. Never thought starlight alone could cast a shadow. Definitely mesmerizing. I still remember it like it was yesterday. An empty sailboat with no mast, 300 miles from land. Sometimes, during nighttime I have went out of the accommodation, leaving compartment on board merchant ships, to breathe some fresh air or to take out the trash since the garbage station was outside. And when it is completely dark, and the water is calm, you hear the splashing water against the ship's hull. Well, I can't explain why, but the ocean water was luring me, but at the same time you are terrified, since nobody will find you if you fall overboard. So sometimes I was just staring at the water in the dark, and inside me was some struggle, like some part of me wanted to jump in, while the other was terrified that it would be a one-way ticket. Can't still find the explanation for this. This hypnotic, mesmerizing feeling I get, and at the same time the chills running down my spine, that if I would fall in the water, it's game over for sure. It was 1998, I was only 11, was out for a quick boat ride with some family. Swissair Flight 111 had recently crashed a bay or two away. We saw a suitcase floating from afar. My dad quickly turned the boat back to shore. I was in the USN back in the late 80s, early 90s. Cruising through the Indian Ocean in 100% blackness, then waking up the next afternoon and looking over the rails and seeing hundreds of sharks swimming alongside of us constantly. Every now and then we would get a man overboard alert. They never recovered even one of them at night. They were usually suicides. A toilet. I mean a literal regular household toilet floating hundreds of miles from land, and why was it floating? I'll never know. Former Navy. The Indian Ocean is absolutely infested with sharks. You see nothing but dorsal fins extending all the way into the horizon. Oh hey, one I can actually answer. So this isn't the creepiest story, I'll admit that straight off. I was working on a tiny oil rig off the Gulf Coast. It was about 2 p.m. I was on what was called sliver duty. Basically you wait in between two relatively close together walls on the exterior of the rig, strapped into a safety harness, while someone skirts through a long flow cable that you direct. Boring, but you get a nice view of the ocean for an hour or two. Suddenly my buddy on the other end of the sliver starts screaming to look down. I do, and saw the biggest sea creature I've ever seen in my life. End to end it must have been the size of most rural hospitals I've seen. Just pushing below the surface of the water, it raised its head out and I realized I was really dumb and was staring at an undersea cable placer. Reefs in the middle of nowhere. You can anchor and see everything, but they don't get above sea level, so looking from the horizon, nothing's there. About a 12 to 15 foot tiger shark. I think I answered this a few years ago. While sailing in northern Alaska, during the Northern Lights, we saw what we thought was a bright spotlight from some aircraft at like 3 a.m. It shined for about 10 seconds. Went away. And shined one more time. And didn't make any sound. It was high over some mountains, so we couldn't quite see what it was. Only 4 of the crew saw it. And we laughed that if we told anyone, not a single person would believe the way we would describe it. An unforgettable night for us. That was a good crew to sail with. This is one of the rare Ask Reddits that is genuinely interesting and spooky. It's not my whole career, but I've been out at sea. Ironically, it's not the bodies of refugees in the water so much as boots, backpacks, etc. that have washed up on shore that stick with me. My answer won't get top billing, but I loved watching flying fish when the ocean was perfectly calm. Incredible. I worked on giant warships in the U.S. Navy.